Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have.
Hi everybody, Pete Sardis for the Lawyer You Know. We are back talking about Sunny Balwani. Week 9 of his trial is over. The prosecution has rested. Witnesses have spoken out publicly, and we're going to tell you all of that stuff. But before we do that, if you like this episode, give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe to our channel and see what else we have to offer. And as always, if you have questions and comments, please leave them down below. So with that, what happened? The prosecution has rested their case after 9 weeks of presentation to the jury. It is over. They put up 24 witnesses in order to show the jury that Sunny Balwani is guilty of conspiracy and crimes of fraud against investors, doctors, patients, and we shall see now what the next step is going to be in this case. So now what I expect is going to happen, that the defense is going to do a motion for a judgment of acquittal. And the reason they're going to do that is in order for a defendant to preserve an issue for appeal, that defendant has to notify the judge, tell him why he believes or she believes that a case needs to be dismissed or that something's not appropriate or that something has not been proven in order to give the judge an opportunity to rule on it or to cure it if necessary. And that's what's going to happen. It happens in every case because you want to make sure that you're preserving those issues for appellate purposes later. So what I'm anticipating is a motion for a judgment of acquittal, basically saying that the government has not met their burden, the elements necessary to prove that the government has not proved the elements of the charges that Balwani has been accused of beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. So that's what I'm anticipating we're going to hear. Now, what's going to happen? I anticipate that Judge Davila is either going to do one of two things. He's going to deny that motion, or he's going to reserve ruling and wait for the defense to determine if they're going to put on a case in chief of their own. And then when the defense renews the motion for judgment of acquittal at the end of the case, then Judge Davila can rule generally about whether or not he believes there's enough evidence to support the government's prosecution. So we shall see what we'll see what the judge does in that regard. I'm guessing we're going to see some written motions, and also I'm anticipating we're going to see some written orders from the court about that. So part 2 of that is after that motion practice is done, the defense has the opportunity to put on their case in chief. So what do you all think? I'm going to ask the question to you. Do you think Sunny Balwani's team is going to put on a defense case, or do you think they're going to let it rest on whatever the prosecution presented in their case? Do you think Sunny Balwani is going to testify? Let me tell you what I think about it. I think that the defense is going to put up some witnesses. I personally believe Sunny Balwani is going to testify. Other than that, I truly think that this is not going to take 3 more weeks. I'm anticipating that if the defense starts this week, I would suggest maybe 3-4 days is what I would expect max. Maybe, just maybe, it goes into the week after, a 2-week defense, but that'll be about it. I think Sunny Balwani is going to be the longest witness. He'll probably be on the stand for a day, maybe a day and a half max. And then everybody else is going to either be a half-day witness or even less than that. So we shall see what happens when this comes down the line. Now, let's switch gears for a second. One of the things that I thought was interesting after the testimony in this case was a lady by the name of Erin Tompkins. Now, Erin Tompkins testified in the Elizabeth Holmes case. She's also testified just recently against Sunny Balwani. She was a patient, and her story is that she received results that wrongly indicated she was HIV positive, causing her obviously emotional distress, and her doctors beginning to put her on medications and do things in order to treat an HIV diagnosis that was not in fact true. From her perspective, she testified outside of the courtroom. Let's try that again. She testified outside of the courthouse to some reporters that she thinks Elizabeth Holmes got away with a crime. She felt like even though the prosecutors had done an illustrious job of proving financial fraud and conspiracy to defraud people, investors of their money, she felt that the patients were more of an afterthought to the government, And that afterthought really meant that the government put them on the stand, let them testify, but at the end of the day, she felt as if they didn't really connect Elizabeth Holmes, specifically, to the patient's wrong results or her knowledge of the wrongful results to patients, which means they didn't get a conviction. Now, she says that she's a little bit more hopeful in the Balwani case because the government has done a much better job, I think, in the Sunny Balwani case, demonstrating that even though he's the number 2 guy at Theranos, he is the person who is responsible ultimately for the day-to-day operations in the Theranos lab. So obviously, she's testified that she got bad lab results, and those lab results caused her distress. Sunny Balwani being the person responsible for that lab, ergo, hopefully she's saying that there will be a conviction from that testimony. Part 2 of this is that she's not the only patient to come out and speak publicly. There was another lady who, if you recall, she had had 4 miscarriages and she had gone to get some blood work done to test a specific enzyme, and the Theranos lab results said that the pregnancy was not going to be viable. She then went to her doctor, and thankfully she went and got a second opinion before terminating her pregnancy, which was exactly what her doctors were recommending based on the Theranos results. She spoke out to the media and said basically she feels that she was defrauded just as much as the investors, because even though she may not have lost millions of dollars, she was in a place where she could have lost her child, which by the way was born healthy, and she has a healthy and happy child at this point. She testified that she felt she was a victim of a crime, and that because she didn't lose millions and millions of dollars, the prosecution really didn't spend a lot of time and energy, focusing on their plight. Again, she testified on against Elizabeth Holmes. We already know that Elizabeth Holmes was acquitted of all the charges against the patients. She also testified against Sunny Balwani. She, of course, is also hopeful that because of the connection between Sunny Balwani and the control of the lab, that maybe she'll get a different outcome this time. Now, one of the things that I think may very well happen if Sunny Balwani puts on a defense, I think Sunny Balwani's defense team is going to take advantage of a theme that they've been pushing throughout their cross-examination of lab directors and scientists. And that theme is that the prosecution cherry-picked instances where the Theranos lab results were incorrect. And in fact, I believe you're going to hear from a guy by the name of Mark Burns. Mark Burns was a doctor, Phoenix, that had a relationship with Sunny Balwani early in those Theranos days. And I believe that he's going to testify that he has gotten inaccurate results from other competitor labs to Theranos. Those labs, for example, LabCorp, have also made errors in their testing. It's rare, but it does happen. So therefore, the argument's going to be that this is artificially created, because even though the argument is the Edison machine is not producing reasonable and reliable results, that can be said at any given time about any other commercial lab, simply because nothing is infallible. All right, with that, I think we're also going to find that Dr. Burns might testify that for the years that he was using the Theranos blood test machine, he only had a single error, meaning that the rest of the lab results that Theranos was providing to his practice were accurate and correct and had no issues. So we shall see. I believe that he's going to testify for Sunny Balwani, and we'll see how that comes together for him. I'll let you know when it happens. Other than that, I think Sunny's going to testify. We already talked about it. I think day and a half max. So I don't think we're going to go 13 weeks. I'm guessing that if week 9 was the end of the government's case in chief and of course the jury selection time, I'm anticipating 1 week more of defense case in chief, maybe 2, and then we're going to go to jury. So you all tell me what you think. I'd love to know your opinions. Do you think it's going to go well for Sunny Balwani? Do you think it's going to go differently than it did for Elizabeth Holmes? Tell me your thoughts and we'll talk about it soon. Thanks for joining us. And again, if you liked the episode, give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe to our channel. And as always, leave me your questions and comments below.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.